Okay, so when you hold a book called American Fascists, The Christian Right and the War on America by Hedges, well, the first thing that hits you is usually the title, the content itself, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's designed to provoke, definitely. To shock, maybe warn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for us, then this deep dive, it's always about looking underneath that. It's about the mechanics of persuasion. Like, when you're faced with a really charged political critique like this one, how do you analyze the argument, the structure, how the author builds trust, how they use emotion? How do you analyze that instead of just reacting?
And that's precisely what we're trying to do here. We're not here to debate if he's right or wrong about the central claim.
No.
Our mission is really to dissect the rhetoric. How does Hedges actually build his case? How does he use his own credibility, his authority, and how does he, quite effectively, use emotion to persuade you?
Yeah, we want to give you the tools, basically. Tools to read this book and, frankly, any political writing like it with a bit more insight.
A sharper eye, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. So where do we start? Maybe with the foundation. Hedges' authority, his ethos.
Right. Because he doesn't just walk in cold. He's got this solid ground already established. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, covered conflicts, power abuses all over the world.
That immediately gives him credibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As someone who knows how to spot political decay.
But what's really interesting, I think, is he doesn't just lean on the journalist credentials. He brings in his background in theology, too.
Ah, right. He grew up as the son of a Presbyterian pastor.
Exactly. So he positions himself not just as this outside observer, but also as someone who gets the language, the fervor of faith from the inside, an inside outsider.
And that dual expertise is so crucial for his argument. It lets him claim he understands both the religious texts and the political realities on the ground.
Which significantly boosts his authority, especially for his intended audience, secular liberal readers, probably.
But does that duality also kind of open him up to criticism?
Well, yeah, you could argue that. If he's a pastor's son, maybe some people see him as having, I don't know, an axe to grind against certain types of fundamentalist Christianity.
Right, so his ethos is strong, definitely, but it's maybe inherently polarized from the start.
I think that's fair. It works really well for rallying people who already agree or are inclined to agree with him.
But it signals to others, maybe his opponents, that he might not be objective. And the timing of the book, that just amplified everything. We've got to place this book in context. Mid-2000s.
Oh, absolutely. That context is everything. You had the post-9/11 anxiety still really raw, intense culture wars, battles over moral issues, and crucially, this perception, maybe reality, of growing political power within certain factions of the Christian right.
And Hedges taps right into that high-stakes atmosphere, that feeling of national fragility after 9/11. He uses it to frame the domestic threat he's describing as, well, existential.
And it's the whole thing feel incredibly urgent.
So his purpose becomes pretty clear then. It's to inform people, yes, but really to warn them, to provoke action.
Especially among those already worried about democracy, church-state separation.
He's basically sounding an alarm, saying this rise of dominionist Christianity demands immediate moral vigilance.
Which brings us right to the core argument, the big one. The claim that segments of the American Christian right show characteristics of a fascist movement.
That is just a massive claim. Huge. And it needs serious logical backup, right? The logos.
Definitely. So how does he try to build that logical case? Well, he doesn't just pull the definition of fascism out of thin air.
No, he tries to ground it.
Right.
Yeah.
He explicitly points to scholars, thinkers like Umberto Eco, Robert Paxton. He uses their frameworks.
So he's mapping features they identified in historical fascism onto what he's seeing. Things like anti-intellectualism, this obsession with a lost golden age, militarized language.
Exactly. He's arguing by analogy, essentially. He uses Eco's idea of fascism, for instance, suggests the movement shows a cult of tradition, rejects modernism, focuses on conspiracies, external enemies, that kind of thing.
And then he adds in sociological analysis, examples from American history, contemporary politics, tries to make the connection solid.
Yeah, he layers it.
But let's push back on that logos a bit. Even critics who might share some of his political concerns have argued that using fascism, such a loaded term, it risks stretching the definition too far.
That's the main critique, isn't it? That the analogy, while really powerful and provocative, sometimes lacks analytical precision. Maybe the specific conditions of historical fascism, like total state control of industry, for example, aren't fully there or are downplayed.
Right. It's a powerful comparison, but maybe not always a perfect fit analytically.
And that's perhaps where the pathos, the emotional appeal, really kicks in. When the logic might seem a bit strained, he leans hard on emotion to carry the weight.
Hits the panic button, as you said.
Yeah.
And he does that with just incredibly vivid, almost visceral imagery. You read descriptions of these intense conversion classes or the military drills in some youth camps, the apocalyptic language from leaders.
He wants you to feel it, not just understand it intellectually, but feel the potential danger, the urgency.
And a big part of that emotional punch is framing the threat around dominionism.
We should probably clarify that for listeners. Hedges defines dominionism as this belief that Christians have a mandate to take control or dominion over earthly institutions, government, law, everything.
Basically replacing secular law with their version of biblical law.
Exactly. And framing it that way immediately raises the specter of theocracy, which is, understandably, a terrifying idea for his secular readers.
So he connects those existing anxieties about terrorism, national security, cultural change, directly to the emotional language used by the movements he's describing. It's like, look what they fear, look how they talk about war, now you should fear them because they're mobilizing based on that panic.
It's very effective for mobilization, for sounding the alarm. But like we said, there's a cost.
Right.
When the stakes are always presented as existential, as this all-or-nothing battle for the nation's soul, well, it pretty much shuts down any possibility of dialogue or nuance with anyone who disagrees.
You can't really negotiate with what's framed as an existential threat.
Precisely.
Okay, so if the content is meant to alarm, what about the structure of the book itself? How does that reinforce the message? Let's get into the structural and stylistic choices. This is where the craft really comes through.
Yeah, the structure is quite deliberate. It's basically a problem-solution format, but done with this intense feeling of urgency.
How so?
Well, he doesn't really meander. He starts right away. Here's the threat, the problem. Then the following chapters trace its history, its ideology, kind of building the case piece by piece.
Leading up to a final warning for the future, where the implied solution is clear. You need to recognize this and resist it.
And it's organized thematically, too. Chapters like The War on Truth, Apocalyptic Violence. Each one isn't just presenting information, it feels like an escalation.
Building the reader's anxiety, confirming the danger chapter by chapter.
Yeah, it builds momentum. And the language, the diction, and tone are key to this.
How would you describe it?
It's often quite formal, scholarly even. He maintains that journalist's authoritative voice. But then it's frequently broken up by these sudden bursts of urgent sensory detail.
So it's a mix. Analysis and visceral description.
Exactly.
Huh.
A blend of objective analysis and subjective, almost horrified observation. He'll use long, detailed analytical sentences establishing his authority, then hit you with short, punchy warnings designed to jolt you.
And he uses specific rhetorical tricks too, right? Like repetition.
Oh, definitely. Repetition and parallelism. He hammers home phrases about intolerance, totalitarianism, the destruction of democracy, often in parallel structures.
Why? To make sure you internalize the threat.
I think so. It creates this drumbeat effect, reinforcing the severity of the crisis he perceives. And contrast is huge, too. Juxtaposition.
Setting up American ideals
Against the stated goals and rhetoric of the groups he's critiquing. Pluralism versus their alleged intolerance. Individual rights versus control. Democracy versus theocracy. He forces that stark comparison.
Making any middle ground seem like a moral failure.
Pretty much, yeah.
So let's talk effectiveness. Did it work? I mean, the book certainly made waves.
It absolutely did. In terms of its primary goal, raising awareness, drawing attention among his target audience, liberals, progressives, it was highly successful. People still talk about it. It's often praised for that moral urgency, the force of its argument.
But being impartial here, we also have to look at the limitations, the critiques, from a rhetorical perspective.
Right, because while it's rhetorically powerful, its ability to influence a broader conversation might be limited by that very same intensity, that polemical tone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We touched on the logos critiques earlier, the potential overgeneralization in connecting historical fascism to contemporary groups. Even with all the research, critics pointed out a reliance sometimes on powerful anecdotes.
Anecdotes are great for pathos, for emotional connection, but they can weaken the logos if they're used to represent an entire diverse movement without maybe enough systematic evidence to back up the claim across the board.
So generalizing from specific extreme examples, perhaps.
That's the argument some reviewers made. They faulted Hedges for what they saw as rhetorical excess. Using language that's so charged, making such sweeping claims, it risks just hardening the battle lines.
Reinforcing polarization instead of opening up a more nuanced discussion, maybe even with moderates or people not already in his camp.
Yeah, potentially alienating people you might need for a broader dialogue.
So wrapping this up, what's the takeaway for us as readers analyzing this? It seems like the book is this incredibly passionate, very skillfully constructed warning.
For sure. Hedges masterfully used his ethos, that journalist-pastor's-son combo. He deployed powerful pathos with those apocalyptic warnings. And he built a logos, however contested, connecting his points to historical scholarship on fascism.
It's undeniably a significant political critique from a time of real cultural anxiety. But, as we've discussed, its reach might be limited by those definitional stretches and that uncompromising tone.
Which leads us to the final thought, I think, the thing to really chew on. It's about that balance in any powerful political writing.
Go on.
Hedges' passion, his fervor, it definitely added weight to his moral warning. It made people sit up and listen. But at what point does that moral urgency tip over into rhetorical excess? At what point does the very strength of the warning start to limit the conversation the writer actually wants to provoke? That's the critical tightrope, isn't it?
That is the perfect place to leave it. It's that critical balance we should all look for. Next time you read something really charged politically, think about that. How does the tone shape your trust? Is the urgency meant to mobilize you or maybe to shut down debate?
Something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. That's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
We'll catch you next time.